family dinner was meant to be a happy occasion. Everyone was dressed well, the table was full of food, and laughter filled the air, until Marcus, Daniel's older brother, suddenly turned to Sophia. With a smirk on his face, he said loudly, "You're just a housemaid who got lucky marrying Daniel." The whole room went silent. Forks stopped moving. Glasses froze halfway in the air. Sophia sat still, her hands on her lap, her heart pounding. The words hit her like a slap. She had worked hard all her life, never expected special treatment, and never hid her past. But hearing those words, in front of everyone, made her chest tighten. Daniel's eyes flared with anger. "That's enough, Marcus," he said, standing up. "Sophia is my wife. Show some respect." But Marcus just shrugged and laughed, like he'd made a harmless joke. "Relax," he said. "I'm just saying the truth. Don't act like you picked her for her background." Sophia wanted to cry, but she held it in. She looked around the table. Chloe, Marcus's wife, smirked but said nothing. Their mother, Evelyn, looked uncomfortable but didn't speak up. Robert, their father, cleared his throat but kept eating. No one defended her except Daniel. She felt alone. She thought of all the years she spent working as a housekeeper, not because she had no dreams, but because she wanted to understand people, to support her father's charity, and to live with dignity. She had never felt ashamed.
One quiet afternoon, while Daniel was at work, Sophia sat at her desk with a cup of tea and a folder of files from her late father's charity. She had inherited the foundation after his passing, and though it was painful to look through the papers, something had been pulling her toward them for days. She felt like the answers were hiding in plain sight. As she flipped through old donation records and loan documents, one name suddenly jumped out at her: Marcus Bennett. Her hands froze. Her eyes scanned the line again. Loan issued to Marcus Bennett, $500,000. Her breath caught in her throat. The date was nearly 3 years ago, a few months before her father had passed. She kept reading. It was a short-term loan meant to support a startup Marcus had pitched to the board, something about tech solutions for schools. There was no record of repayment. Sophia leaned back in her chair, stunned. Marcus had borrowed $500,000 from her father's charity, not from a bank, not from investors, but from a fund built to help widows, orphans, and low-income students. And now, 3 years later, he stood in a family dinner, laughing at her like she was beneath him. Her hands trembled, but she kept going. She looked through the signed contract. It was legally binding. Her father had trusted Marcos, perhaps thinking family ties meant something. There were clear repayment terms, but no follow-ups, no receipts, no logs of returned funds. It was clear. Marcus had taken the money and vanished. And worse, he had never said a word about it to anyone. Sophia sat quietly for a long time. Her heart wasn't just angry, it was broken. This wasn't just an insult anymore. It was betrayal. Her father's legacy had been used, even stolen, by someone who now mocked the very daughter who tried to protect it. She closed the file, locking it safely in a drawer. She didn't call Daniel. She didn't tell anyone. Not yet. She needed time to think. But deep inside, something changed. She had the truth now. Not just suspicion, but proof. Marcus had tried to silence her with shame, but now she held the power of facts. And soon, she would decide what to do with it. Sophia moved through the next few weeks quietly, calmly, as if nothing had changed. But inside, her mind was working like a clock. She knew she couldn't confront Marcus in private. He would lie, twist the truth, maybe even play the victim. No, if she wanted to protect her father's legacy and show people who Marcus truly was, it had to happen in a space he couldn't control. That's when the idea came to her, a charity gala. Not just any event, but a grand evening to honor her late father's work and raise funds for the foundation he built from the ground up. She got to work without delay. She reached out to venue managers, designers, and sponsors. Everyone was eager to support. Her father's name still held deep respect, and many remembered the good he had done. Invitations were printed, menus designed, and silent auction items collected. Sophia poured herself into every detail, not just to honor her father, but to make sure the event felt elegant, powerful, and unforgettable. Then came the guest list. She and Daniel had discussed hosting a gala before, but this time she added a few names he wouldn't have expected: Marcus and Chloe. She knew they wouldn't resist an event like this. It was exactly the kind of room they wanted to be in, full of wealthy donors, business owners, and investors. They'd show up in their best clothes, ready to make connections, ready to brag. Marcus would never miss a chance to polish his image. Daniel, meanwhile, remained unaware of the deeper plan behind the event. He was proud of Sophia, happy she was honoring her father and stepping into her role as the head of the foundation. He helped where he could, offered to write a speech, and told her he'd invite a few old friends. But Sophia kept the most important part to herself, not out of dishonesty, but because she needed to carry this alone for now. She smiled through it all, calm and graceful, as if everything was simply about love and legacy. But deep inside, she was preparing for something more. She wasn't after revenge, she wanted truth. And soon, in front of everyone who mattered, the truth would come to light. The night of the gala was magical on the outside. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Music floated gently through the air, and guests arrived in elegant suits and gowns. The hall was full of laughter, clinking glasses, and warm memories of the man whose name the foundation carried, Sophia's father. At the center of it all stood Sophia, graceful and poised, greeting guests with calm confidence. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, but no one could tell. She looked like any proud daughter, continuing her father's legacy. Marcus arrived late, as expected, dressed sharply in a tailored tuxedo. Chloe followed beside him, beaming with her usual practice smile. They mingled quickly, working the room like seasoned performers. Marcus moved from table to table, laughing loudly, shaking hands, trying to impress the investors and business leaders in attendance. To him, this gala was just another opportunity to sell his image, but Sophia was watching. After dinner, the lights dimmed. The stage lights warmed the room as Sophia stepped up to the podium. A hush fell. Everyone expected a speech about the foundation, her father's legacy, and future goals. And at first, that's exactly what she gave. "We are here tonight to celebrate honesty, compassion, and responsibility, the values my father lived by," she began. "He believed in lifting others, not stepping on them to rise. And tonight we remember him by standing for those same principles." The crowd clapped softly. Marcus smiled and nodded, sipping his drink. But then Sophia's tone changed. "Unfortunately," she said, her voice steady, "some have forgotten those values. Some, even in this very room, have taken advantage of the trust given to them. They have stolen from the very people this foundation was built to help: orphans, widows, and students." Murmurs spread across the room. Marcus's smile faded. Sophia turned to the screen behind her. It lit up with scanned documents, loan agreements, signatures, email. "3 years ago," she said, "Marcus Bennett took a loan of $500,000 from this foundation, money meant to serve the poor. He has not repaid a single dollar." Gasps filled the room. All eyes turned to Marcus. He stood frozen, his drink trembling in his hand. Chloe looked at him, confused, then horrified. Sophia looked out at the room once more. "Integrity," she said quietly, "means doing right even when no one is watching. But tonight, we all saw." The room fell into stunned silence. The once cheerful gala had turned into a storm of whispers, shocked faces, and wide eyes. Marcus stood like a statue, caught completely off guard. His charm, his smile, his fake confidence, all of it disappeared in a second. The giant screen behind Sophia still displayed the proof: his name, the amount, and the charity's official documents, showing he never paid a single cent back. Some guests stared at him in disbelief. Others quietly picked up their bags and left their tables. A few investors, who had been speaking with Marcus earlier in the evening, backed away from him as if he were contagious. They had come to support a good cause, not to be tied to a man exposed as a liar and thief. Chloe turned to Marcus, her voice sharp and loud. "Is this true? Tell me this isn't real." Her hands shook, her face red with embarrassment and anger. Marcus tried to speak, but no words came out. His mouth opened slightly, but nothing followed. For the first time in years, he looked completely helpless. "Marcus!" she snapped again, her voice trembling now. "Answer me!" I was going to pay it back," he finally mumbled. The business didn't go the way I thought. I needed time. I didn't think she'd..." He stopped, realizing how pathetic he sounded. "You used money meant for orphans," Chloe said bitterly, stepping away from him. From across the room, Sophia's in-laws, Robert and Evelyn, watched in horror. Robert, usually calm and diplomatic, stood, and walked straight to Marcus. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. "You've shamed this family," Robert said coldly. "You lied to your own blood, stole from a cause your father-in-law gave his life to, and then you mocked Sophia for having the heart to serve others." "Dad, I can fix it," Marcus stammered, but Robert raised a hand to stop him. "Get out," he said simply. "You're no longer welcome in my house." Chloe followed Robert out of the room, leaving Marcus standing alone in the middle of the hall. His face was pale, his hands shaking. The same man who once laughed at Sophia now stood surrounded by empty chairs and turned backs. And Sophia, she didn't say a word. She didn't need to. As the room began to settle, the air still thick with tension, Sophia stepped forward again. Calm and composed, she faced the guests, many of whom were still whispering in disbelief. Cameras clicked. Eyes were fixed on her, not with pity, but with admiration. "I know tonight has taken a surprising turn," she said, her voice steady but kind. "But I want to share something I've never spoken about in public before. It's important, because stories matter. And sometimes the ones people tell about us aren't true." She paused, her eyes scanning the audience. "Many of you have heard that I used to be a housekeeper. That's true. I cleaned homes, washed clothes, and lived very simply. But what most of you don't know is that I chose that life." A soft murmur ran through the crowd. "My father built this foundation to help people, real people, with hard lives and quiet struggles. He always said, you can't help someone if you don't understand them." After he passed, I didn't want to just manage his legacy from behind a desk. I wanted to understand the people we served. So I spent 2 years working as a domestic worker, living like they lived, learning firsthand what dignity means when you have little. The crowd was silent now, moved and thoughtful. "Marcus once called me a housemaid who got lucky," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "But the truth is, I'm not lucky. I'm intentional. I inherited my father's assets, yes, but I also built my own path. Today, my net worth stands at $15 million from investments, businesses, and this foundation's continued success." A few gasps escaped the audience. Even those who had judged her quietly now looked at her with new eyes. Sophia looked in Marcus's direction. When people mock others, it's often because they see something in them they're afraid to face in themselves. Marcus's insult wasn't about me. It was about his fear of being exposed, of being less. She took a breath, her final words soft but clear. "I was never ashamed of who I was. I cleaned houses, yes, but today I build futures." The crowd erupted into applause. Sophia stepped back, not for attention, but because her truth had finally been heard. In the days that followed the gala, the consequences of Marcus's actions came crashing down like a storm. Investors who once trusted him pulled out immediately. His name was trending online for all the wrong reasons. Charity thief, scammer brother-in-law, gala disgrace. Within a week, his company collapsed. Clients cancelled contracts. His accounts were frozen under legal review, and his office shut down. At home, things were no better. Chloe, humiliated and betrayed, packed her things and left. She filed for divorce quietly but firmly. She'd stood by Marcus for years, but this was something she couldn't forgive. The trust was broken, and the shame was too heavy to carry. When asked later, she simply said, "He didn't just fail me. He failed every child that money could have helped." Meanwhile, Sophia's in-laws, Robert and Evelyn, visited her. They sat with her in the living room, this time not out of duty, but out of respect. Evelyn reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "We were wrong about you," she said softly. "We let Marcus speak for us, and we failed to see your heart." Robert nodded. "Your father would be proud, and so are we." Sophia didn't need the apology, but it mattered. It helped heal something small inside her that had been quietly hurting for years. She didn't stop there. When Marcus was forced to repay the $500,000 under legal pressure from the foundation's board, Sophia didn't pocket a single cent. Instead, she called a board meeting and announced her decision. I want this money to go where it was meant to go. Let's build a scholarship program for young domestic workers who want an education. Let's turn this shame into something that uplifts. The board agreed, and within a month, the Rise with Dignity scholarship was launched, fully funded by the money Marcus stole and repaid. People began to speak about Sophia not just as a survivor of humiliation, but as a woman of vision and integrity. She didn't just expose Marcus. She transformed the pain into purpose. As for Marcus, his name was no longer spoken in business circles. His fall had been public, but his loneliness would be private. He had lost everything, not because Sophia destroyed him, but because he tried to destroy her and failed. Some months later, life had shifted in quiet but powerful ways. The story of the gala had faded from the headlines, but its impact lingered in the lives it touched, especially Sophia's. People now spoke of her with admiration, not judgment. No one looked at her and saw a housemaid anymore. They saw a woman who stood with grace, even when insulted, and responded not with revenge, but with purpose. Sophia continued running her father's foundation with a new sense of vision. The scholarship program for domestic workers was growing fast. Women who had spent their lives cleaning homes were now sitting in classrooms, studying nursing, education, and even business, many inspired by her story. She spoke at conferences, sat on panels, and mentored young women who once thought they had no future beyond scrubbing floors. One day, after a community event, a young girl approached her. "Did it hurt when he called you a housemaid?" she asked quietly. Sophia smiled, gently touching the girl's shoulder. "It did," she said, "but only because I forgot, for a moment, that being a housemaid was never something to be ashamed of. What matters is not where you start, it's where you choose to go." That night, as she sat with Daniel, sipping tea on their balcony, she looked over the city lights and said, "You know, people always talk about luck when a woman rises, but luck had nothing to do with it. I earned my place." Daniel looked at her, pride in his eyes. "You didn't just earn it, Sophia. You made it." Far across the city, in a small, run-down apartment complex, Marcus was struggling to start over. His reputation was ruined, his marriage gone, and his wealth dried up. He now lived alone, taking small accounting gigs online just to pay rent. The man who once looked down on others now had no one to call. One evening, he stood at his window, watching as a truck delivered boxes to a new neighbor. On the side of the box it read, "Rise with Dignity Scholarship." A former housekeeper was moving in, now a college student. Marcus turned away, defeated. Sophia's words echoed in his mind, "I earned my place," and he finally realized she had. Months later, Sophia officially launched the Rise with Dignity program, an education and skills training initiative for domestic workers across the country. The program offered scholarships, counseling, and job placement. Applications poured in. Sophia visited centers, met the women, and shared her own story with them. Many wept hearing that someone who once cleaned homes now ran one of the nation's most respected foundations. Daniel stood beside her at every event, proud and unwavering. Her in-laws, once distant, now praised her openly. At family gatherings, it was Sophia they asked for advice. Sophia they turned to with respect. One quiet afternoon, as volunteers unloaded food at the charity center, a delivery man arrived wearing a cap low over his face. He said nothing, dropped the boxes, and quickly left. Inside the boxes were hot meals, paid for in advance. A staff member found a receipt tucked inside with no name, just a small note for those starting over. Sophia looked at it and said nothing, but deep down she knew Marcus had nothing left to give but this small gesture, and even in silence he had finally understood who she truly was. And she had already moved far beyond needing his recognition. Do you think Marcus deserved a second chance after everything he did to Sophia? Or was his quiet act of repentance too little, too late? I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. Was it justice or just a warning? And if you enjoyed this story and want more powerful tales like this, Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.